Welcome to the show. IB Nation Sports Talk up and rolling on a Thursday. Hope you're having a great day. Beautiful day outside here in South Bend as we get ready for Notre Dame and Florida State this weekend, along with Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. Andre's here for the party. He says he loves the We In, We Out show. So we've got something for Andre and everybody else tonight as well. How you doing, Jess?
Good. It's been a pretty nice day here. Easy day of work. Tomorrow's Friday. Naomi's gone, so I can just kind of chill. I don't have to worry about many things.
Watching some football tonight.
Invited some friends over, see if they want to come watch some football. I have the NBA League Pass too, so we were thinking about bringing a TV down, putting an NBA game on, putting a football game. So pretty nice.
I'm thinking about going all in on NBA. You know, just like something new. Watch some.
Who are you gonna root for?
Every night.
Just be a fan in general, or
I don't know if this is like fair weather. I have always been partial to Golden State. Just, I do like Steph. I know you're not as high on Steph, but I've always liked their style, of offense, that kind of thing. I don't know. They're a little bit older, a little longer in the.
Well, that the Cavs are 9-1, and the Warriors are like 7-1 or 8-1, and their next game is against each other.
I saw they beat the Celtics the other night.
Yeah,
so
they're playing really well, and Buddy Hield is on that team now. He kind of replaced Klay Thompson, so they look a younger kind of Klay Thompson, in my opinion.
Yeah, I did enjoy watching Minnesota in the playoffs last year until they got beat by Dallas. That was they didn't really show up against Dallas after kind of, a couple good early series. I don't know if I'd be in on them or not, though. Cleveland might be the way to go. They're under the radar, like no big stars right now, right?
Right, and they have Evan Mobley, and if you remember, him and his brother played for their dad at USC for a little bit, and then they got drafted. He's kind of like he was I think they wanted him to be a 4 because of how, big he is, but he's real tall and skinny.
Mobley, is that what
Mobley,
you said?
yeah, Evan Mobley, but he's put on
like Catino Mobley. Is he related to him?
If that's their dad's name.
I'm not sure if it's their Catino Mobley is like that's a name from way back. I don't know.
Let me see real quick. Evan Mobley, dad. No, their father's name is Eric. But anyways, long story short, he's like developing into this kind of like Kevin Durant guy. Like he's getting the shooting's coming along. He's kind of finishing down the lane a lot recently. So you should do it. Get you a NBA League Pass, 3 months free, and then see if you like it.
I'll think about it. I might.
I don't know if you saw this as well, but there's rumors that Dak tore his hamstring off the bone. So
yeah, I did see that. He's going to come up here in a minute, actually, in We In, We Out. I don't know if you've seen any of the We In, We Out. We don't have any. Only 5 questions Marcus Freeman got at his Thursday Zoom. So we're not going to start the show with that. We're going to go right into We In, We Out. We will have a couple of the Marcus Freeman comments at the start of Rapid Fire, along with some other stuff in Rapid Fire, of course, as well. Glad to have everybody here for the show tonight as we segue out of NBA talk here this evening. Before we get to We In, We Out, I do want to tell you about my bookie. It's the one book that's got your back. No fluff, no second guessing, just straight up action with you in control. At my bookie, it's never been about guessing. It's about giving you the edge so that every bet you place comes with confidence and a plan. So if you know football and you love to win, then my bookie is just for you. And if you're new, use our promo code IRISH, and that'll double your bankroll with a 100% deposit bonus right off the jump. That's more money, more power to make winning plays. Bet anything, anytime, from anywhere with my bookie, the sports book that gives you total control and rewards for every moment of play. Ready for We In, We Out?
I love We In, We Out today. It's like
I do too. I look forward to this day. It's always a lot of fun getting these We In, We Out questions.
You don't know what's going to come up. You get to include the fans, so they have more, not fans, but listeners, followers.
Listeners, follows are fans too. That's why they're here, right? They're fans. Not necessarily our fans, but fans of Notre Dame.
Right. but it gives them the opportunity to, let their voice be heard and have an input as well. And it's fun to bring that interactive aspect.
Four Horsemen 88. We in and we out on Notre Dame hosting a first-round playoff game this year. Let's start with that. We in or we out on Notre Dame hosting a first-round playoff game this year?
I'm in on Notre Dame hosting a playoff game this year, and obviously we know that means they have to finish the season 4-0. But I think if they continue strong at 4-0, I think naturally after seeing that first ranking, I think they have some room to kind of bump up a couple more spots. But like you pointed out, there has to be consideration of who's the actual at-large bids, who's getting that first-round bye, and then what kind of team does that bump maybe to, a different spot where they would potentially kind of steal that home game from Notre Dame in an essence. So there's a lot of dynamics that go into this, but I think as long as Notre Dame goes 4-0, they will host a playoff game.
Well, like looking at the rankings the other night, obviously BYU is ranked 9th, but because they would be the 4th highest ranked Power 4 conference, they would get, they bump up to the number 4 seed basically and get that bye in the first round, So like if they're like, so as of right now, that doesn't impact Notre Dame because Notre Dame is still behind them. But if BYU were to fall behind, there's still something like that can happen. But you've only got to move up 2 spots. So I really want to see, I think, a couple weeks of games play out and see just how much these rankings change. Do we get any upsets over the next, like Vince is convinced that it's going to be like a typical year. There's going to be all this total chaos and Notre Dame is just going to vault its way up. I'm less convinced of that just because.
Well, the conference, the championship aspect of things provides a lot of buys. And again, if you have bid stealers who now jump up and get that buy from a team, that team could still be like Oregon.
That's where the impact, I think, is going to come more with the bid stealers at the end. Yeah, yes. Like what happens when Oregon and Ohio State play? What if Ohio State wins that rematch?
Yeah, then both. I think Ohio State and Oregon would be ahead of Notre Dame in that instance. And again, that would just kind of bump them out of that playoff realm. But I'm still sticking out that I think I honestly am hoping for an IU Notre Dame game, to be honest with you. And I don't care who's home, but I think that would be a lot of fun regardless.
I think that's an interesting prospect. So I'm hesitantly out on hosting, even though you only have to gain 2 more spots. I kind of agree with what Joe is saying. I do think the NIU loss is going to be held against them more than, anyone from Notre Dame wants to admit, that it should be held against them. But I think that it is. I mean, that's why they're sitting at 10 right now and instead of maybe a couple of spots higher because of that. The other follow-up, though, from Four Horsemen, does Notre Dame get a first-round win regardless of hosting?
So I think the best way to answer this question is, do you think Notre Dame would match up with a school like Penn State very well? Potentially, I see Notre Dame kind of falling into that, second or third best Big Ten team of who they're going to potentially kind of face. I think that bodes well for them, actually. I think playing a team like Penn State would actually bode well for them because I think there's Penn State I think Notre Dame has passed Penn State in terms of athleticism on the field.
I do too.
And I think that it's not a tune-up, but it's like a good, potentially kind of like appetizer before the main course, right? Enough to kind of push you. It'd still be probably, a 1-score game, but a game where I think Notre Dame would have the edge because I think defensively they're pretty similar. And I'd give the edge slightly to Notre Dame. And I think offensively I'd give the edge slightly to Notre Dame as well. So that's the kind of matchup I'm looking for. And I do think as long as Notre Dame, doesn't have the turnovers or make, some huge kind of like special teams blunder, that they would stack up and have a good chance of winning round 1.
I think Penn State is a great matchup. I think, Indiana is an interesting matchup, like you were talking about, the possibility of playing them. Essentially, when I look ahead of Notre Dame, to me, kind of one of the scarier teams is Tennessee. You know, like of all the teams, the 9 teams that are in front of Notre Dame right now, having seen the other ones quite a bit. I mean, Miami is kind of like, can you contain Cam Ward or not? You know, like that's kind of how that's their magic formula.
Look at how many points Cal put up on Miami. Like I don't think it's a matter of their defense stinks. They're just trying to score more points. I mean,
right.
Obviously you're trying to score more points than the other team, but like they're trying to run it up. You know what I mean? Like that's the name of their game. They're in like these shootouts essentially.
Yeah, Joe makes another good point. Ding, ding, bring it up. He says he thinks Notre Dame can get to the semis because their defense and running game, those things generally travel well. Absolutely.
I think the running game is actually what is more important in the playoffs. I think everyone can pass these days in modern football.
And again, those first couple rounds, there's no one ahead of them right now that would be like, man, I don't want to play them. I think they match up well against just about anybody.
I think the only team I would be sort of leery of is I would be pretty leery of Georgia still, I think, for some reason. I don't know if it's just
because of the size and the trenches and all that kind
of stuff.
Those
are some big athletic boys, you know? Like that's one of those games where it's like I don't know if they can match up athlete for athlete. That's where I'm kind of like,
They've got the size of Texas A&M, but they've got better overall athletes than Texas A&M. That's a fair point. But again, like I think in terms of just pure explosiveness, Tennessee's got some of that as well. Really,
that's it.
Yeah. So D. Troll Hunter, he's got 3 in a row. He's got Mike McCarthy, Dak Prescott, Jerry Jones.
So we're just supposed to say, are we in, we out?
I mean, this is the we in, we out show. So obviously, are we in or we out on Mike McCarthy? I think this is an easy out for me. I think it is for you as well. I mean, I was out on him after the Packers lost in the playoffs last year, and Jerry Jones just decided to run it right back. And he was a dead man walking coming into this season, and he's a stiff man walking right now. So I'm totally out on Mike McCarthy.
So, you know, I was actually looking at something the other day. Remember when I told you, I was like, I think this is my least favorite Cowboys team the last like 20 years or something like that. Mm-hmm. The reason why I came to that conclusion is I pulled up their record by record season and was just kind of going back and looking at different things. And, you know, last year, if they had any shot to kind of, you know, to really make some noise in the playoff, it was last year. And then it was 2019. And then before that, it was all the way back in 2009. So I guess what I'm getting at is last year was the season to do something. They fell flat on their face. The offense this season is just so bad. I mean, everyone talks about it. Kurt Warner, Dan Orlovsky, no separation, no creativity, you know, and that goes back to Mike McCarthy because he's supposed to be the guy taking over this offense. So I'll be short on this one. I'm out on Mike McCarthy. His time is up.
Okay. Joe says he hope they keep Mike because the Cowboys must never rise up. Again, there is always that aspect. And there's kind of a follow-up to this here in a little. You know what? I'll just go ahead and scroll to it right now, and then I'll scroll back. Of course, it's D. Troll Hunter. Lincoln Riley as the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. In or out on that?
I'd be out on that.
I would be in on this all the way. I would eat this up, actually. Like, he is the opposite of Mike McCarthy. He actually has a plan from an offensive perspective, and you don't have to recruit in the NFL. And I think that's his biggest problem out there at USC right now is recruiting. So great offensive mind. I would take Lincoln Riley in a heartbeat over the option right now.
I would be out on Lincoln Riley. The name that actually comes most to mind, and I don't want, you know, this is obviously a wish list, right? Like I don't want to be like, oh, that I don't need you beating me down on this will never happen, but I think Bill Belichick would be a great fit for the Dallas Cowboys.
I think he would,
because I think he would actually bring discipline, toughness, playing sound football.
But let me cut you off there real quick. I don't disagree with any of that. I think that, you know, like obviously Bill Parcells was the last actual competent head coach they had, you know, and it's like the same coaching tree, obviously, Parcells and Belichick. Have you read any of the stuff about Jerry Jones and the fan tours that he gives down there of the facility in Dallas?
Yeah, it's just, they ask fellow Cowboy players though, and that's the part where it's tough because.
But let me cut you off because I've listened to 2 podcasts with the lady who wrote the article, like two different interviews that she's done. She went on 3 tours in 3 days because like each day, like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, each day you go to a little bit different part of, the facility. So like she wanted to make sure that she saw everything when she got in there. The reason she did it was she talked to players and the conversation, like former players, and the conversation starter was not, what do you think about these tours? The conversation starter was, why has this team fallen so flat over the last few years in the playoffs? Why can't you push by? And they all independently brought up the tours as one of the distractions that you have to put up with when you're down there. And she said after, like you'd go in there and so like there's this group of fans and all of a sudden 5 feet away, Micah Parsons rolls by, and he's got like his crutches and his ankle, walking boot, I guess, or whatever. And it's like anyone can just see what's going on. And Jerry Jones has no inclination like of ever changing this. He doesn't care if that's a distraction. And I just can't see. And like some of the other things she brought up, and she said this too, I cannot see Bill Parcells wanting anything to do with the sideshow circus that Jerry puts on down there.
Yeah, and again,
that's all I'd say.
Like I said, I don't know if it's actually realistic, but if we're talking about who would be a good fit as the next head coach, that's ultimately a guy who's well-rounded on both sides of the ball. And just to me, you got to change the culture. And I don't think Lincoln Riley could change the culture as quite as well as someone like Bill Belichick could. So that's kind of where my answer came from.
Yeah, and that's where Parcells was able to, to kind of do it, was because he was able to have some culture change. Christmas decorations before Thanksgiving.
I think you forgot the next 2 above them.
I mean, do we really have to go into Jerry Jones?
I was going to be out on him, and
we're all out on him. We'll talk about Dak real quick, but I do want to. I don't want to spend belabor the whole thing on the Dallas Cowboys. I'm actually still in on Dak Prescott because I do think most of the issues have to do with. I just don't know what the offense is that Mike McCarthy is running. To me, it looks more like what Kellen Moore was running. Yeah.
When you're following the recipe that you're given and the cake doesn't turn out good.
Yeah.
Again, like I don't know what. I showed you that graph the other day. Dak's got the most tight window throws with the least amount of turnover, likelihood of turnover. So it's like he's doing his part.
I mean, he's frustrated me a couple times because it does seem like some of the interceptions this year are like, why are you even throwing that ball? But yeah, there's a graph of every quarterback in the NFL in terms of like percentage of tight window throws and the interceptions. And Dak actually has thrown the most tight window throws and percentage wise has the fewest interceptions as a result. So it's actually better than you think. It's just that the whole scheme, the whole thing just looks total incompetent, but it's a reflection of the head coach. That's what it is.
So back to the decorations.
Christmas tree decorations before Thanksgiving.
No, I am out. I am a day after. Well, I guess I shouldn't say I'm a day after Thanksgiving. My mom is a day after Thanksgiving person and made everyone else partake in the day after Thanksgiving. But no, I enjoy it because Thanksgiving always kind of marks the end of November, beginning of December. You put them up, and then you take them down kind of, a couple of days after Christmas. So I like having the Christmas decorations up all of December, and I think the day after Thanksgiving or even Thanksgiving Day is a good time to do it.
That's kind of, as you said, that's our tradition around here is the Christmas tree decorations go up the weekend, like Thanksgiving weekend, but not on Thanksgiving. It's like you get through Thanksgiving, and then after that is when the Christmas decorations go up. So your boy Brent is here. He's ready to mix it up. He's ready to spar, throw you some jabs. By the way, do you have your computer plugged in? Did I ask you that before we
everything's started? I think we're doing good. Don't jinx it.
Well, I just saw a flicker. That's why I was asking. So D-Troll coming in hot on Mike Berardino wasting Marcus Freeman's time every press conference with awful questions. Are we in or are we out on that? I'll just say this. Like, as far as my interactions go, Mike has always been a nice guy. And
what did he ask recently? Was there a recent kind of thing that
I was going to say Monday? He actually asked about CJ Carr, and I thought that was one of the better questions that he's asked in a while. Now, he also asked about election day, and like it's those kind of off the wall. Like Mike has written at some bigger, like sort of more national places, I think, prior to coming here and covering this beat at Notre Dame, and it seems like that's kind of his angle. Like these. Like the human interest angle or whatever, they're not necessarily always tied directly to, to things I think that more fans probably care about. Definitely not our fans. Right. So,
I guess what I would say with this sort of question is I'm never going to give kind of an opinion on someone that kind of does the same sort of work, because that sort of stuff can kind of come back to you. But
right. You're not Vince is what you're saying. Vince has no problem just ripping to shreds everybody else's questions, even though Vince, never actually has to go ask the questions, so.
But he will critique the questions.
No, Joe, it was not Berardino who asked the question about why Freeman isn't starting Angeli, because the fans.
I think I know who that was, and that's one that I like to secretly joke about.
And it made it even more of a head scratcher to me based on who it was. But we don't have to beat that up. All right, Domer Grizz with some Notre Dame women's basketball questions. Olivia Miles will have at least one more triple-double this season. In or out on that one, Jess?
Oh, I'm going in on that for sure, especially after seeing her performance in the last game. I know it wasn't against as maybe competent as competition, but I think it's only. I mean, think about how long she was out and the ability to do that against that level of competition, and then as she ramps up, I think that stuff ramps up against as competition ramps up as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be plenty more teams that level of competition, and her three previous triple doubles, Valpo, Merrimack, which is another school that was transitioning from Division I to Division II a couple of years ago, and then UMass in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Solid UMass team that she did it against. She became the first player ever to get a triple double in their NCAA tournament debut, their first ever NCAA tournament game. So I'm going to go in because again, she's already got the program record now with 4 triple doubles, and the first player in Notre Dame history to have a triple double in 3 different seasons. And just based on what we saw there, it was just so effortless looking the other night, especially after missing a full season. So I'm in on that. At least 2 more. I might be out on that because hopefully by the time December rolls around, there's some of these other players are going to be back, and maybe she doesn't have to play quite as many minutes as she had to play on Monday. Yeah, that was Monday. Yeah, Monday as well. So I'll go out on that one. In or out on Hannah Hidalgo leading the ACC in steals this year?
Oh, that is 100% in. I was looking at last year's stats. She finished with 160 steals in 35 games. The next closest person was 99 steals in 33 games. So that's a 60 steal gap between 1 and 2. And I think she's going to continue to pester a lot of teams. That's what makes her so good as a basketball player. So I definitely think she's going to lead the ACC in steals again.
I mean, she led the nation last year with 4.6 with those 160 that you're talking about. And she had 6 the other night. And I think that's going to be one of the advantages. And I've kind of talked to her about it in the interview, before, what's that been, a couple of weeks ago, I guess now, is by playing off the ball more, I think it's going to give her that much more that she can do defensively, where she doesn't have to be on the ball, like just the energy that you exert by doing that, by having Olivia Miles out there. So, like, if anything, she's already the ACC's Defensive Player of the Year. I think that her defense is going to get even better this year, and that's even that much more scary. So I'm totally in on that one. This next one, Hidalgo will have more steals by herself than at least 3 whole teams in the ACC. I'll be out on this because she did have more than one other team last year. And that other team was Virginia Tech, which kind of surprised me that it was Virginia Tech because as a team, Virginia Tech was good, but they just don't. Their guard play wasn't that good. Obviously, they had Kitley, the big post player, but as a team, they had 132. I think she'll have at least more than probably at least 1, maybe 2 teams. Probably not 3 though. So I'll be out.
I finally, I've been looking for team steals for the longest time, and I finally found it. Just doing some kind of rough math last year, like you said, Virginia Tech finished with around like 140 steals per game last year, and then the next lowest team was Georgia Tech, and they were roughly kind of around just over 200. So I think maybe if you set the over under at 1.5, I think that would be kind of the line here. And excuse me, just for fun, because I think her numbers will go up this season. I'm gonna take the over and go. She'll beat 2 teams.
So you're saying she will beat 2 teams, but not 3. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
I can see that. Is that your cat, by the way?
You don't have a cat, so yeah, it is.
Well, the funny thing is we don't have a cat, but for the last 3 weeks, there's been this cat. I don't know if it's a stray or if it's a neighbor's cat or what, but it prowls around our house, and I wasn't sure if it was like outside the window or where that was coming from. So. Brent wants it. I'll save that. We'll keep Vince not here. No detention, he said. ND Forever 72. We in or we out? Due to the difficulty of the first half of the 2025 schedule, Notre Dame once again goes to the transfer portal for an established high-level quarterback instead of rolling with a Minchie or Carr. Probably Carr, who will have no real experience. The first 2 games are against Miami and Texas A&M.
So I think they're going to go to the portal for a quarterback. It's just a matter of what level of quarterback. Are we going for a starter? Are we going for kind of an emergency plan if the young guys don't pan out? But I think Notre Dame has to put their foot down at some point and get out of this portal cycle and, just kind of bite the bullet. But I think what makes this a hard decision for Marcus Freeman is when you have the amount of defensive talent and your defense is a, national championship level defense, I think you're kind of doing the rest of the team a disservice by not finding a quarterback that gives you the best shot. And that's what Sam Hartman and Riley Leonard were the last 2 seasons, is giving them a legitimate shot, because some guys just, again, it's not enough just to win the games. You need someone who's going to win the big time games for you. And that's why you get Sam Hartman. That's why you get Riley Leonard. But I think with Denbrock, and I think with kind of the development path that they've been going down, I do think that they're going to roll out one of these young guys next season. And again, ultimately kind of bite the bullet and have actually a quarterback that's going to be a multi-year starter after next season.
I'm going to be way out on this. They're like, this was, this is kind of what they've been angling to, like you said, maybe they end up bringing that magic Ivy League quarterback out of the portal who's going to take up some space on the depth chart, like a certain Vincenzo thought they were going to do this past season before they ended up getting Riley Leonard. That's the only route to me, is if they have to go out and find somebody like that because they need to, have some bodies in the quarterback room, like if you have a transfer or something like that. But no, Vince will streak around his house at midnight if Minchie or Carr is not the starting quarterback next season.
Is that what he said?
No, I'm signing him up for that. But
okay.
Vince will do it. I'm making a bold prediction.
Have you guys bought we need the bold prediction board.
I'm making a bold guarantee for Vince right here.
Is this a Charles Barkley guarantee?
Yes.
That's I need to know the level of guarantee here, and that's the top guarantee I know is the Charles Barkley guarantee.
Right. I'm writing a check that I know Vince won't ever have to cash. If it's going to be one of those two. So I'm way out on that. From DJ, Jeremiah Love has 150 yards from scrimmage and 2 touchdowns against Florida State. In or out on that?
I don't think he's gone. Has he had over 150 scrimmage yards yet this season?
I will find that out very, very soon here for you. I'm pretty sure just keep going.
I think he's close, but I don't think he's gotten 150 yet.
I know he's been over 100 a couple of times.
I'm gonna say out, and I'm gonna tread water that I don't like to tread water in, but I'm going to. Bold predictions. I think Notre Dame this will be another game where the starters are done by the end of the third quarter. And as long as Notre Dame handles their business against a really undermatched Florida State team, I think it's hard to kind of rack up unless he's got, 2 like vintage Jeremiah Love runs where he's breaking away for 60-yard touchdowns. I just don't see him racking up 150 yards outside of some big explosive runs. So, and then again, you factor in, I think, Ford, Price, Aeneas Williams will get a lot of touches because, again, it is Florida State. And, again, I don't think you're going to just run one guy through the gauntlet. So I'll cautiously say out on this one. I
mean, that's the thing. It's still a platoon situation with the running backs. And that's why I think, he'll have 1 touchdown and he'll have a chance. Like the most carries he's had in a game, the most total touches he's had in a game this season is 17. And that was against Georgia Tech when he didn't have that great a game. He only had, 93 total yards.
That the game Price fumbled too?
No, that was Louisville. That was Louisville. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. And so, but they are, they're still platooning those guys. And that's why I think that he's got a really good chance to have over 100 yards, but I don't think individually he'll have over 150. So I've got to be out on that one. SEC will have a 2-loss champion and will be the only conference with a 2-loss champion. In or out on that?
I'll be out on that. I think they will have a 1-loss champion. I don't think they'll.
The SEC will have a 1-loss champion, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I don't think it'll get to a 2-loss champion.
I think I'm going to be out as well because I'm still pretty heavy on Georgia right now. They just know how to win those games, like all these other teams, just pesky flies. Would be interesting if you had a rematch of Texas and Georgia in the championship game, but in that case, in that scenario, the winner would only have 1 loss. So
bring up that DJ comment that he said he had 120. Well, I'll just kind of say it out loud. It's nothing crazy. Said in the comments it says he had 126 against Purdue, I believe. That was my favorite game of the season. Because just before I texted one of my buddies who lives in a state that can bet player props, and I just had this feeling about Jeremiah Love. I said, take 60-plus yards, which was like plus 100, his over-under line, and parlay that with a Jeremiah Love touchdown. And I don't know if you remember, but he ripped off like that 50-yard run like 2 yards into the game. Mm-hmm. I basically cashed out in like the first quarter. I was like, this is the easiest bet I've ever made.
He did have 127 against Purdue, and that is his high water mark.
So the cat, just to give everyone some context here, daylight savings messes with your animals because they're so used to when it gets dark. That's kind of their indication of when they want to get fed. And so everyone's feeding schedule is now an hour up because of daylight savings. So
gotcha.
I'm getting harassed that it's dinner time because
why aren't you feeding me?
Yeah, it's now dark outside. It's like, well, buddy, I still have an hour. So that's why you're hearing the shrieking in the background from the cat.
Yeah, I mean,
that's basically what I
returns.
said.
Yeah, I mean, he could have a couple of long runs, and that's kind of the thing is like for both he and Price. I mean, they're each good for like 1 long run per game, and then it's just kind of grinder runs the rest of the time. But that's all Notre Dame needs, especially when you throw Riley Leonard into the mix. Still got Lincoln Riley on the brain from the Cowboys question earlier. Okay, so a good one here from Joe. He says, Joel Klatt says Notre Dame is not in control of its own destiny, stating, quote, what happens if one of those teams, Iowa State, Kansas State, Colorado, get into the Big 12 championship game and beat BYU? Well, now you're starting to be compared as an 11-1 against 12-1 Miami. This is obviously assuming Miami is going to lose. 11-1 Indiana, 12-1 BYU, 10-2 Alabama, or 10-2 LSU, or 10-2 Texas A&M, end quote. Klatt explained. The best case scenario would be if they be compared directly to Texas A&M because they could have a head-to-head win over them from the beginning of the year. So, are you in or out on that from Joel Klatt?
Yeah, I'm in on the discussion, and it's something that I think you've kind of alluded to, and some of the stuff that we've talked about with bid stealing, and you don't want basically two lost teams kind of upsetting. And is there a scenario where some crazy things could happen and Notre Dame gets left out? Sure, but that's every college football committee rankings. I think, in my opinion, is there's all kinds of crazy stuff that could happen, but in this direct situation, and then I'm also going to say I'm just out on Joel Klatt in general. He's a Big Ten boomer. He loves to rain on Notre Dame's parade when given the opportunity.
Well, and he loves to throw his shade at ESPN for over promoting the SEC, but all he does is go overboard with the Big Ten, right?
Right.
Because Fox is televising all these Big Ten games.
And in direct comparison, against 12-1 Miami, I don't think they stack up. Against 11-1 IU, I do think they stack up because, yes, IU's loss is better, but Notre Dame's wins outweigh whatever wins IU would have at the end of the day, right? So I think they would stack up well against 11-1 IU. 12-1 BYU, I think they stack up well against, because I do think that Notre Dame, if they were in the Big 12, I think they would win the Big 12. 10-2 Alabama, I think that's where it gets tricky because obviously they love the SEC, but Alabama has 2 losses. I think they'd be better than a 10-2 LSU, and they'd have to be better than a 10-2 Texas A&M because they have 1 less loss and they beat them head to head. So there's a lot in that scenario. I think they stack up well in the majority, but again, there could be some crazy thing where like some 2-loss teams bid steal and win 2 of those buys, and then now those teams have to get reallocated. So sure, there is probably like a 10% scenario where Notre Dame gets left out. But I just don't think that at the end of the day, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, this is the doomsday scenario where one of these teams upsets a BYU in the Big 12 championship game. Or, there's more, I think, havoc going on in the Big 10 because of all the chances that you're going to have 4 1-loss teams in the Big 10 when it's all said and done. And again, I think it's going there is a chance that Notre Dame can get squeezed, but it's also the flip side of that is, and Vince and I were talking about this yesterday, you have to make sure that you don't just win these games. Like, obviously the first priority for Notre Dame is to win these next 4 games, but they also can't look bad. They can't look sloppy. They can't look ugly in the process of winning these games. Style points will matter.
Yeah, you can't remind people of NIU. You have to leave a good taste on everyone's mouth to kind of end the season, essentially. That if you leave a bitter taste, you come out, you lay an egg or have a sloppy game that you barely win or squeeze out of, it's going to be very reminiscent of NIU for a lot of people. And then they're going to be like, well, we don't want to see that happen in the playoffs and watch Notre Dame just get steamrolled. So, yeah, you can't leave a bad taste towards the end of the season.
But it's also important that Notre Dame is number 10 right now. And as of right now, Alabama and LSU and Texas A&M are all behind Notre Dame. All these other teams that he's talking about, like whether it's BYU or Indiana or anyone else, even a Miami, all these teams are in front of Notre Dame right now. So, yeah, an upset in the Big 12 championship game would obviously bump, whoever down a spot, but Notre Dame does still have, 2 spots behind them as the wiggle room, like you would like to see them move up. Like if Indiana loses to Ohio State here in a couple of weeks, and they lose a lopsided game, but Notre Dame continues to look good and, like I said, does not look sloppy winning these next few games. Notre Dame is going to move past Indiana. I have no doubt about that, because Notre Dame's strength of schedule is already, like Indiana's got the worst strength of schedule of any of these teams in the top 12. Now, Notre Dame has the second best strength of schedule, but they also have a much better win over Indiana. And, and if Indiana, again, if they lose a lopsided game, and I'm talking about 2 to 3 touchdown kind of game to Ohio State, that's got to play in Notre Dame's favor as long as Notre Dame is taking care of what it's taking care of. So I get what he's talking about. Yes, an upset could impact Notre Dame. But again, that's end of season stuff. Like Notre Dame is sitting at 10th right now. Where are they going to be even 2 weeks from now? Are they going to be up a couple of spots? Are they going to be the same? It's not necessarily win and keep moving up, because it's part of what these other teams do as well. But I'm not I think that is probably the 5% scenario that something like that happens and actually does affect Notre Dame.
I would agree.
Another one from Joe. In or out? Vegas sets the over-under point total scored by Florida State at 7.5. So he said, in or out? I'm guessing he means over. Will they get? Are you in on the over on 7.5?
It's funny. I every week, since I can't bet on player props, I am a over under total points fiend. I am always looking at the over under total points by team. When I was looking at the Florida State 7.5 last night, actually, when I was laying in bed, and I was like, man, that's such an interesting number, because Florida State hasn't exceeded 21 yet this season. However, and you would say, yeah, 21. They haven't exceeded 21. Playing at Notre Dame against probably the best defense that they'll play all season, but it's it just takes one broken play and a field goal to get 7, and it's that number just makes me so uncomfortable. If that was 9.5 or maybe even 10.5, I'd be way more comfortable about it. But in a game where you're probably expected to blow someone out and you want to get backups in, and again, it takes just kind of one broken all I think about is that first NIU touchdown where the Notre Dame corners kind of ran into each other and the guy just ran off on a slant route for 85 yards.
All it takes is something stupid.
All it takes. And so when I see a number that low, I cautiously tread. So I would have to be out. I would have to be on the under on this one. I'll
just solve it and say I've got Florida State scoring 10. Maybe they don't, but I think that they're gonna. I've got them scoring 10 points. So I'll be out. D-Troll, Penn State at number 6. In or out on that?
I appreciate this question. I'm just pulling up the rankings.
Look, they lost to Ohio State by a touchdown. I know that, everybody, they lost to Ohio State again. I mean, that's why they would have been in the playoff 6 times in the last 10 years or whatever it is, because they lost to Ohio State. So it's not like they've played poorly otherwise. They do have a win over an, at the time, ranked Illinois team. They've got a road win over USC. They've got a road win over Wisconsin. They've got a better strength of schedule than Notre Dame right now. So I've got no problem with them being ranked number 6.
I'm out on Penn State being ranked number 6, and I didn't appreciate the logic by the college football playoff, because they rewarded BYU and Indiana being undefeated to be ahead of Notre Dame, but that only carried them so far. Why are those undefeated teams not ahead of a team like Penn State or maybe even Tennessee at the end of the day? Some of those one-loss teams.
We talked about this yesterday in Rapid Fire. The fact that the name brands, like if Indiana, with the record that they've got right now, was Michigan or Texas or whoever, name your team with
they'd be number history. 2 in the country.
They'd be number 2 in the country right now.
So that's what I don't appreciate is the logic. If you're going to put undefeated teams ahead of Notre Dame, and that's your logic, they're undefeated and stuff. Penn State didn't play well against Ohio State. I told you on Tuesday I thought that was a sloppy game, And I don't think outside of Ohio State, the rest of their schedule is all that impressive. So I'm out on them. I think Penn State falls around 8 or 9 for me in my rankings.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the difference between Penn State and Notre Dame right now, again, Penn State does have a little bit better strength of schedule, but they lost to Ohio State. Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois.
For sure.
I mean, that's like the difference in that.
Well, and the committee, I'm just going to flat out say it. They love the SEC and the Big Ten. They believe that that strength of schedule.
But they've been groomed to love the SEC in the Big Ten because of the power that they will.
Right. And so I think that ultimately kind of, what's happening is, and I've said this before too, the Big Ten is always so top heavy. There's like 2 or 3 teams that are so good. And I think the rest of the teams aren't any good. They're just average teams. And that's proven come bowl season. I mean, look at the Big Ten's record in most bowl seasons. It's not great compared to other conferences. And so I don't think they should get credit for beating bottom feeder Big Ten teams because they're not very good teams at the end of the day. But since they're in the Big Ten and they beat other Big Ten teams, they like that. But I'm just not buying it.
Joe says Notre Dame beat their ranked teams. Yes, but they also have the worst loss of anyone who's in contention right now. And again, like you can't just brush that aside like it never happened. Like it's great that Notre Dame did beat the ranked teams, but they've also got a horrible loss, and it is a horrible loss, and that's what's holding Notre Dame back right now. DK wants to know why I'm a Penn State advocate. I'm not a Penn State advocate. I just don't hate Penn State the way, obviously Vince does. But Penn State won't play any ranked teams the rest of the way. Washington, Purdue, Minnesota.
Vince wants to be the Midwest alpha. He wants Notre Dame to be the alpha of Penn State, IU, Michigan State, Purdue. Like Vince is that. I think he gets offended when other Midwest teams are like on that same tier with Notre Dame.
D. Trollhunter with another one. Speaking of Penn State, in or out on they need a change at head coach to take the next step?
Oh, 100% in on that. We talked about that Tuesday in the James Franklin rapid fire question. I just at some point, when are you gonna stop being complacent with being average or basically sub quo, right? Doing what you're supposed to, but never winning the games that you're technically probably the underdog in. You don't beat the big teams, right? And I just think at some point, if you're a Penn State fan or within the administration, you got to get fed up and be like, I want to win the big one. I want to beat Ohio State. I want to beat Michigan. I want to do something in the playoff, etc. So I'd be in.
I'm in as well. I mean, I think that Notre Dame fans should be happy that James Franklin is at Penn State. Notre Dame never, I think it would be a very, evenly matched game. As of right now, they're obviously set to play in the first round. So I'm not saying Penn State would beat Notre Dame. That's not what I'm saying. But like, if James Franklin was out at Penn State and he ended up at USC, I would be, like USC would be a lot better, more consistently than what they are if Franklin were out there. Now, does he still need to get, better, skill talent and all that kind of stuff? Of course. But I think fundamentally USC would be much better if James Franklin were out there than what they've had. But I think that this, like, to me is a little bit, if I were to make an NFL analogy, it's a little bit like when Andy Reid was in Philadelphia. And, it's just like, oh, they got tired of all that winning. And then Andy Reid, it was time for a change of scenery. He got to a Super Bowl once, but, never was able to win that big one. Got a change of scenery, brought his system to Kansas City, won some games even with Alex Smith, got him, was winning divisions and getting to the playoffs even with Alex Smith. And then finally he got his quarterback and some skill talent around him. And lo and behold, Andy Reid, obviously, all of a sudden is a Hall of Fame head coach. And I think that a change of scenery would probably be good for both James Franklin and for Penn State. So, yeah, I'm in on that. In or out on Billy Napier being Florida's head coach next season?
I think he's got another year.
I think I just saw, didn't he just get like a vote of confidence or something the other day?
Wouldn't be surprised, but No, I think he's in a much better situation than kind of giving credit for. But I do think I think he's walking a tight line, but I don't see them making that move this season.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was looking for the article. I saw the headline, but I didn't read it. Florida sticks. Here we go. Florida sticks with Napier. Florida's decision to have Billy Napier continue as head coach is the top line takeaway from the open letter athletic director Scott Strickland penned to fans Thursday. I mean, they must not want to eat that buyout right now. So I will go in. Another one from D. Troll Hunter. Lincoln Riley equals Charlie Weiss. It's all about the scheme, not fundamentals. In or out on that comp.
I see the comparison, but I don't think it's nearly as bad or extreme. And I don't think that Lincoln Riley is like kind of like a, I'm going to get here, do my thing, and leave things in shambles type of guy either. But I do believe that they're, all about scheme. I do believe that they're all about the offense and that sort of stuff, but I'm not buying it's to the Charlie Weiss level.
No, I'm not either. I do think that he needs to recruit better. But look, he's coached 3 Heisman winners now at this point. He did well in Oklahoma before going out to USC. He was able to kind of ride on the Bob Stoops trail for a little bit, but he was able to recruit his own guys there at Oklahoma too, and they kept winning at a pretty consistent level. The biggest thing is like a couple of different things with USC is the program was just in much worse shape out there, and the roster is still not anywhere close to what it needs to be. So that's the biggest thing to me. So I don't think that it rises to that level as well. He at least knows how to run a program. He's just got to recruit better, and they've got to get the whole thing filled up out there. The roster filled up out there, especially when you're competing now in the Big Ten. Jacob says worst loss. I assume we're talking about Northern Illinois here. Jacob, when you're saying that, he says they didn't get blown out, but they lost. They lost to a team that is under 500 in the MAC and is one game over 500 overall. It doesn't matter if they got blown out. They were at home and they lost. It's a pay game. They paid over over $1 million, I think. When you're paying that kind of money, you're expected to win those games. So it doesn't matter what the score is. They lost, and they lost at home to a group of 5 team that they were absolutely supposed to beat, and that's why it is the worst loss. Again, regardless of what the score is, the final score says they lost the game, and that's why it's the worst loss of any of the teams that are in contention for a playoff spot right now.
What I would say is I'm going to echo a lot of what you're saying, but there's just no excuse to losing at home to a MAC school if you're Notre Dame. And the best way I think, give an analogy on this one is in baseball, a hit is a hit, no matter if it's off the wall or if it's a dribbler that goes down to the third base line. In football and any other sport, a win is a win, no matter what the margin of victory is. And a loss is a loss, no matter how close it is or how big it is. All the people care about is what's in that column, win or loss. Doesn't matter by how much or how little, it's a win or a loss. And then when you compound that with who it's to, a MAC opponent at home, there's no way it's indefensible.
Absolutely. No disagreement with that at all. Hyperion Return says Charlie didn't even understand the importance of a college-level strength and conditioning coach, or that it's important to recruit defense just as much as the offensive side of the ball. I mean, I don't disagree with any of that. But the bigger thing is the guy had never coached in college a day in his life. And, he could have taken the input of guys on his staff who were in college and maybe had a little bit better chance in year 3, but he didn't know how to run a college program and how to develop those guys and get them ready to go. Like he lost all the experience. He lost all the starters after 2006 and the thing fell apart, and did a little bit better in 2008. But he was not a program builder. He was an NFL coordinator who came to Notre Dame and
he just wanted to showcase his offensive brilliancy. That's really all it was.
Yeah. And it was the same at Kansas when he got there.
I guess what I would say, I think the best way to put that is, how coordinators kind of come to Nick Saban as kind of like maybe they didn't do well in the NFL, or maybe they didn't do well as a head coach. They come to Nick Saban, kind of recharge for a couple years, and then get that next opportunity. That's what Charlie Weiss was doing. He didn't care about – he cared about winning, but he didn't care about having a complete team. And as long as his offenses looked good and he could have an opportunity to maybe bounce back into the NFL because of, his offensive success, because that's what he was. He's an offensive coordinator under Bill Belichick, got his opportunity in college, and then he just showcased his offense, and that was really it.
By the way, ND Forever 72 appreciates you not dogging out the way he worded your question this week so he can sleep better tonight.
And I do apologize. I was just, being a
kind of holding on to that a little bit, ND.
I was kind of just being grumpy to be grumpy.
All right, a few from DK. In or out on Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, both running for 100 yards against Florida State.
I thought we were skipping all of these DK ones, but I guess we'll do them. I'll be out on that. I don't think both of these guys are century yard guys. Bold prediction, I think Aeneas Williams will have more yards than Price this weekend.
Aeneas has more than Price. Okay. I'm going to be out on that one. I think that, they both might kind of settle in that 65 to 80 yard range, somewhere around there. But Riley Leonard is going to factor in. And the next question, Riley Leonard rushes for less than 50. In or out on that?
Be out on that. I think he is going to go over 50.
I'm out as well. I think he will also be over 50. Riley Leonard throws for 250. In or out?
Out.
Yeah, I just don't know if he's ever going to get to 250 this year, to be quite honest. I think 200 kind of seems to be his ceiling, kind of right in that ballpark. And the way they're most likely going to run the football, he's been over 200 yards twice. So I'm going to be out. I don't think that he gets to 250. Notre Dame's defense gets 3+ sacks. In or out on that?
Be out on that. I think Florida State schematically, it's going to be kind of quick. Let's get the ball out. A lot of quick timing routes. Good friend of mine, extension of the run game. I just don't think you're going to see Florida State dropping back and launching that thing or running a lot of developmental routes. Notre Dame's defense is really good. And again, I think they're going to have a scheme that's let's get this thing out. And even if they're down big, I don't see them deteriorating from that plan either. I just think at this point, they're just kind of working on stuff. And I know that, their coach, who is slipping my mind right now, and I know I should know.
Mike Norvell.
Norvell he has done a good job about trying to be creative, right? It's not the same thing every week. I think they'll have some stuff kind of, ready for Notre Dame, maybe some trick plays or some reverses or, flea flickers, that kind of stuff. But I just don't see them getting into a lot of straight back pass. And I think the only way you're going to get to them is bring in maybe some corner blitzes or mixing in some kind of linebacker blitzes as well to get these sacks. But I don't see – I think they're going to play to their strengths and not to Notre Dame's, and they're going to get that ball out quick.
I think they're going to try to. You backed up your argument very well there, but I'm going to be in on this because the two quarterbacks that Florida State have been sacked 16 times in the last 3 games combined, and they've both played each of the last 3 games. So they are statuesque for the most part. So I'm going to go in. I think that they'll try to get it out if they can. I just don't think they're going to have much success. Their offensive line is not very good. So I'm going to be in that Notre Dame's defense gets that. Anthony Knapp does not get a holding penalty. In or out?
I'll be in on that just for optimistic sake.
Okay. Vince called me the optimist yesterday, but I'm going to be the pessimist. I'm going to go out because it seems like Anthony Knapp always has at least one holding call per game. So maybe the Billy Strouth effect will help him. I don't know. And the last one from DK. Marcus Freeman and Mike Norvell's post-game conversation lasts longer than 5 seconds with Freeman in his ear. In or out?
I'll be in on that. Did you see the clip from the other night between Kevin O'Connell and Anthony Richardson after the game? They kind of had
I didn't.
not a long conversation, but basically Kevin O'Connell came up to him and said, like, you're a stud. Continue to work hard. The Colts love you. Shane Steichen loves you. Just put in the work, essentially, kind of just keep working hard, keep working at it, and good things will kind of naturally happen. I just thought that was cool. Like, he didn't have to take time out of his day to go up and talk to a backup quarterback from the opposing team. So that question just kind of made me think of it. It was pretty cool.
I'm going to go, will last longer than 5 seconds. I'm going to go in that, Freeman will try to console Mike Norvell.
Did you see that not to kind of keep going down these rabbit holes, did you see, I think it was like FAU and can't remember who else, but they were this past weekend, there was a game and these two coaches they had a quick kind of, like whoop. And then the other coach basically was not having it. The guy who kind of got like, I guess what's the word, ignored. And he kept trying to follow the coach and be like, "What? Like, talk to me. Why aren't you talking to me?" And it was really funny. He was just kind of like chasing him down. It's like, dude, obviously the guy doesn't like you. Like, what are you going to get out of chasing him down and being like, "Why don't you like me?"
It's like a hungry cat. It's like a hungry cat chasing after master. Oh, Mr. Tonsel, we in or we out? The Northern Illinois loss keeps Notre Dame out of the 12-team playoff because they're not in a conference. In or out?
Out. And I think we kind of explained most of that maybe a little bit earlier.
I'm out on it as well. It's had an impact because of, like when you look at everybody else in front of them and look, Notre Dame's got one loss, but you've got these other SEC teams behind them with 2 losses. So I don't think it's going to keep them out, and the conference thing plays no bearing in it either. In or out, this is the best Notre Dame women's basketball team we've had since the championship team. Well, I would say probably since the next year when they were national runner-up, and I think they lost the championship game by a point. They were within a point or 2 points of repeating as national champion. So I'll at least say since the year after the national championship, because it was basically the same team that they had. They came back and tried to repeat, but just couldn't quite pull it off.
I think that the way I look at this,
elite.
I think the way I look at this question is the potential. They have the potential to be, the best Notre Dame basketball team since that national championship team. But I still think, obviously, with injuries, bringing in a young big, some of these transfers, it's all about cohesion. It's all about the rotations. It's all about, kind of getting those things together. But I think on paper, the talent level is there between the three-headed guard monster that they have, and then now kind of, again, the presence of a young big that is also really skilled. So I think the potential is there, but I'm not ready to go and say that they are, essentially.
Yeah. Tommy, you're flirting. No politics, buddy. One warning. That's it. You're flirting with it. I know you like to talk about it, but as we've said over and over again, we don't talk about it here. So Indy Forever 72, if for some reason it did keep them out, would they start looking at joining a conference? What do you think about that?
No. I think they've made it pretty clear.
Because again, I don't think it would have anything to do with joining a conference. Because the only thing that would, benefit, like playing in a conference championship game and, having a chance to win so like you're one of 4 teams that win a conference championship game. There's still 8 at-large teams. So I don't think that would be like being in a conference. There wouldn't be any benefit, in terms of why they got left out. So I don't think they would.
Right.
All right. Well, I think that is it, and it is.
Woohoo! Mario.
Are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's do it.
A lot of good questions in We In, We Out tonight. Now I've got to find my rapid fire questions and see what I've got here. So, Marcus Freeman today talked a little bit about his one of his best players, Xavier Watts.
Guy that's just continuing to improve at his skill set, right? He has all the talent in the world now. He's improving at his skill set as a safety in terms of tracking the ball, in terms of making tackles and those type of things. The thing I love about X the most and that he's really improved at is his vocal communication. Like, he's a leader. He is a problem solver. He gets guys lined up. You see him all the time making checks, making calls, and that's the area that I think he's made the biggest jump at is really being a problem solver on the field. You know, when he's out there with Don's a young guy, and even sometimes with the backers, he's able to really get everybody on the same page, and that's where he's really took a huge leap.
All right, Jess. So you heard him there. He talked about the vocal leader stuff, being more vocal on the field. Do you think that's an underrated kind of aspect?
I do think it's an underrated aspect because, you know, he needs to be a leader, first of all. And the number one thing that I've kind of learned, you know, through work, kind of through life, and as I kind of grow in my profession is the more you can be vocal and explain things and teach things to other people, it's just a reflection of how much you have an understanding of what's going on. And so the more that vocal that Xavier Watts can be, it, one, amplifies his leadership, but two, it also displays his overall knowledge of not only what the secondary needs to accomplish on any given play, but the totality of the defense on any given play. So I think, you know, that's the sort of stuff that you need to be to take a next step as a leader and overall football player when your career aspirations are to be in the NFL. Because it's one thing to know your assignment and to know your job, but when you're vocal and you're telling people, okay, this is what you need to do, or communicate coverage, or this is what we need to do, well, now you have a full understanding of the big picture. And I think that's why it's so important.
Yeah, and I think that comes with just the confidence as well. Like, we've talked a lot about confidence with Riley Leonard and his confidence and kind of how that has impacted his play as this season has gone on. And I think from year to year, you know, like instinctually, Xavier Watts always found himself in the right place. But I think, you know, that part of why he came back was not just to be, you know, pretty good. He wanted to be elite and put himself and his team, you know, in like his team, obviously this year, the best chance to win, compete for a national championship, but himself for the future. That, you know, like, I think that's part of it. Just knowing where all those pieces go together, and the more confident you are in that stuff, the more confidence you have to be able to speak up and to help all the guys around you. And like, you haven't seen, you know, like you talked about the two guys bumping into each other against Northern Illinois. Really, that's been like the only, you know, one of the very few, you know, gaffes like that. You haven't seen, you know, very much of that stuff. And I think that the fact that you have an experienced leader like that at the back end is a big part of that as well.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Okay, so Freeman was also asked about a handful of young defensive linemen who we haven't seen so far this year. Cole Mullins, a guy who's had a couple of different injuries. Brennan Vernon, a redshirt freshman. Sean Sevillano Jr. and Devin Houston, and where, you know, what their progress has looked like.
It was just getting back into practice, obviously with his knee injury earlier in the season. So he's very slowly just kind of getting into the practice load, whereas those other three guys have been critical in terms of the preparation for our team. Sometimes they'll be up with the defense, but the majority of the time those guys are our scout team D-line. And I made this comment to the coaching staff yesterday that this might be the best scout team D-line that I've been around in a long time. And in terms of what they're able to, the level they're able to practice at and give our offensive line a realistic look at what they're going to see on Saturday. It's been really impressive. Those guys work their tails off and they're getting better. That's how you get better, right? It's not what you want. At the end of the day, everybody wants to play in the game, but you know what, you have to, within your role, find ways to get better. And their role right now is to be on scout team and to, be ready if we need them in the game. But they are really accomplishing their roles at a high level. I'm really pleased with all three of those guys you mentioned.
Well, and, look, they have a role, but it's been, as he said, scout team defensive line, and that has helped the offensive line like he's talked about. How easy is it, do you think, to be able to embrace that kind of role, especially probably if you are like a redshirt freshman, meaning you didn't play, if at all, maybe handful of snaps as a true freshman. They haven't played so far this year. How easy do you think that role is to embrace?
I'm going to be honest with you. I think it's a hard role to embrace. I think it's a good role to embrace for development, right? Like, you clearly kind of see where you stand on the depth chart, and I think it gives you a good opportunity to develop and get better and really showcase to the coaching staff why you deserve an opportunity to be maybe on the 3-deep roster. But overall, it's really hard to embrace because this is something that I went through kind of, coming out of high school and playing in college. Is high school, you're the man. All of these guys are captains of their teams, are the best player of their teams. They're going to the University of Notre Dame. Like, they're studs, right? And so to go from the guy to now being – not even in 3-deep, not even the travel roster, and you're just kind of scout guy. And, and so I think it's easy to get down in the dumps sometimes, and especially in practice, because you get separated, right? Like, first team defense is on one side of the field, scout defense is on the other side of the field, because they're obviously working with first team offense. And so when you're over there, yes, it's like, okay, I'm developing. I want to show these coaches I'm good and get my opportunity. But at the same time, you have a clear vision of the starters on the other side of the field, basically in a completely different practice. They're practicing Notre Dame's defense and preparing for the game at hand. You're learning, you're looking at a binder full of plays from the other team and just trying to run them to the best of your ability to give your offense the best look possible. So it's really hard to embrace because you want to be the starter, but you clearly are on the practice field looking at the starters practicing in one spot.
Yeah.
And you're on the other side
doing something else.
Not even relevant to the defense that you run. Again, your job that week is to learn Florida State's defense, Navy's defense, and run it to the best of your ability. And there's times where like some of our offensive coaches would get mad at us defensively because we're not following the script. Essentially, we're not That's not a look that they're going to give us, or that's not how that person is going to play. So it's like you're not even really given the opportunity.
All you're doing is trying to mimic something that somebody else is going to do. You have no free will to, and that's exactly right. Now, so somebody said, Brian said, it's easier when the team is winning and you're appreciated. I would say that, because it's got to be even rougher if you're Florida State, for example, and that's your role. It's got to be a heck of a lot tougher there because especially in those, in a lot of cases, these guys are going, man, I should be playing more. I would have a chance. In other cases, they see reality. They know who's in front of them, like, Howard Cross and Riley Mills, so like there's a little bit of difference there, but it's got to be really tough, to kind of keep plugging away sometimes and being able to do that. But this is their opportunity to develop, and they obviously need to keep developing to have, bigger opportunities down the road. And like Sevillano, as an example, like this is a guy who brings something that you can't coach, and that's size, and they obviously need more of that on the defensive line. So if he, keeps it in the direction that they need him to, I'm sure, and some of these other guys as well, but like just him specifically because of that size, I'm sure he's going to have some more opportunities. And like Freeman said with Mullen, like the guy, he broke his leg in high school, and then he had an ankle injury that was related to the broken leg, and then he gets here and he ends up having knee surgery right away. So all of this has happened within less than a calendar year, so in his instance, it's just a matter of getting healthy. But
I will say, like, as true freshmen, it's not nearly as hard to embrace because you're a true freshman, right? Like, there's guys that are there that have been there. They know the defense. They're up to speed. Like, that's the hardest part. You get into a place as a freshman, you got to learn a playbook, and then you got to also kind of, be able to play fast on top of. It's like Jalen Sneed, right? Like, he had to learn the defense and then be comfortable enough to where he could play at a speed that like mimics his talents. But the more you go on through your career, like maybe you're a redshirt freshman or redshirt, sophomore, the more seasons you spend over on the scout team, the more and more harder it is to embrace just being on scout team at the end of the day, right? But as a true freshman, it's like paying your dues almost, right? And you're still, again, working for your opportunity to be a part of that 3D.
Brent wants to know who believes Benjamin Morrison will return next year. He did correct it from Brandon. Benjamin.
I think this is like, if we were doing scale of 1 to 10, I think this is like a 3 out of 10 that he returns.
I think the biggest question is going to be, how healthy is he going to be ahead of the draft?
Right.
That's
does that concern
the
NFL
biggest
teams?
thing, right?
Because he's had 2 injuries in a calendar year now,
and not knowing it's a hip injury, so that is, it's a pretty major injury, but what is the extent of it? All those different things. I'd put it probably at a 3 or a 4, but that's really, again, like what the biggest question is going to be, is this guy going to be healthy enough that teams are going to be confident enough to draft him next April? That's going to be the biggest question. So just not knowing what his recovery time is going to look like, how bad it was to begin with. I don't have a lot of confidence, but again, it's all going to come down to that ultimately. Brent also wants to know, should we be concerned about Marcus Freeman being able to have his team focused this Saturday? What do you think about that?
No, I don't think that we should be concerned about that. And I think I think Marcus Freeman is doing a good job about using that NIU stuff as bulletin board material every week, just drawing back to that feelings and emotions and disappointment and everything that these players felt after the NIU loss. Again, I not that it was a good thing, but remember I said it. I don't know if when we were kind of talking about it, and a lot of people were overreacting. I said, as long as they win the rest of these games, they'll be in good shape. It's unfortunate they had to use their mulligan against NIU, but it put their backs up against the wall, right? There's no more margin of error. There's no more room for error. You felt what it feels like to lose that game. And if you're Marcus Freeman, you say you execute, you do the things we do. We don't have to feel that feeling again, right? We are slowly creeping our way from our backs up against the wall, but it put that pressure on them. And I think there's nothing wrong. Again, I didn't want to lose to NIU. There's nothing wrong with putting pressure on these guys and not allowing for, that margin of error to be quite as big. So I'm not worried about it.
I think it's I think it's legit if you are concerned about that, just because of the fact that you do have NIU. And that's one of the lingering things that happens after that, is that's always going to be there until, honestly, he's got to go 2 or 3 years with not having a major slip up like that without people, I think, having that concern again, because it felt like he had put it behind him last year, and then you win a big game to open up the season, and there you are. You have one of those major snafus once again. But I just feel like with this team coming out of a bye week and, getting some more rest and, all those different things, I think that they'll be plenty motivated because of everything that they've got to play for over these next 4 games. So, kind of speaking of things to play for, scale of 1 to 10, what chance do you give Notre Dame to move up to the 5 seed by the end of the season in the playoffs?
I'll give this a 1.5 out of 10, a 15% chance. Very small. I think that the bigger question, and we kind of talked about this earlier in the show, is could they move up to hosting a playoff game? I think their reasonable range is like, really, they're at 10 right now. I think their reasonable range is like 7 through 10, really.
I think so too. So I'm at like a 2 on this. Maybe 1 is even, more realistic. But just because of, again, who's in front of them and limited opportunities for real upsets to happen when you look at the, like who teams are playing the rest of the way. I think that 7 is probably the best that they're going to do. I think that that's the best chance they have. I can't see them moving as high as the 5. And even if they would, obviously they're in great shape. But I can't see them moving much past the 7 spot unless they just blow everybody out and look so impressive here down the stretch. So that's why I gave it a 2 instead of a 1. Like leaving the wiggle room that actually could happen. Scale of 1 to 10, what's your confidence Notre Dame would beat Ohio State if they had played this year instead of last year?
This is a really good question. I've thought about this question, to be honest with you. 5 out of 10, 50-50. I think it's a toss-up. I think defensively, very similar. I would maybe give the slight edge to Notre Dame. Offensively, very similar as well. Quarterbacks that are, dual threats. I think the edge would go offensively to Ohio State. They have better wide receivers. They have a bit more of a dynamic passing attack. But I really do think that Notre Dame runs the ball just as good and maybe not, if not better, than Ohio State. And I know Ohio State has, Henderson and the guy who transferred from Ole Miss, so they're pretty solid. But I think Riley Leonard is what tips that scale.
Judkins. Yeah.
Judkins. I think between him, Love, and Price, that the running game is just a little bit better because of he can run the ball better than Howard can. But I just think this is a toss-up, and especially if it's on a neutral field, it's even more of a toss-up. But I think it would be a great game. I think this is the most similar they've been in a long time, maybe is the best way to put that one.
Yeah, I think there's not a whole lot of, the way Ohio State has just been able to plug in NFL receiver after NFL receiver for years now has been very impressive. And it's crazy that like Will Howard is not that much better. Just what I've seen of Ohio State. He's got more weapons than Kyle McCord. Yeah. Like Notre Dame's defense is better, but I don't feel like Ohio State is quite as explosive as they were last year. I still like, they have good skill talent like you talked about, but I honestly feel like Will Howard is more susceptible to making mistakes than Kyle McCord was last year. And everyone, ran Kyle McCord out of town. And he obviously hasn't had a great year at Syracuse this year either. So it's a 7 for me. I am really, like watching that Penn State Ohio State game last week, I just felt like it was a really good matchup for Notre Dame. I would love to see Notre Dame's defense go up against that again this year. And I feel like with, especially like at the back end of the secondary, or really just across the board in the secondary, when you look at how last year's game played out, I would really like Notre Dame in a matchup against that this year. So it's a 7 for me. Maybe we see it in the playoffs. Who knows? Fill in the blank. It's blanked before going on to an 89-60 win. Notre Dame men's basketball season started by falling behind 2-0 after Irish forward Tay Davis tipped a Stonehill missed shot into the wrong basket last night.
It's very reminiscent for me, and the reason why it's reminiscent, I don't know if you'll remember this, but this is a memory that I often think of for some reason. I was playing. You remember when I used to play soccer
yes.
back before I started to play football? I remember. I think it was at least end of the season, maybe like our like playoffs or like championship or whatever. But we were playing the other best team in the league, and I took an inbounds like a throw in from the sideline, and I kind of just one-stepped and booted it, and I kicked it in on my own goalie. And I'm pretty sure we lost that game like 1-0 or like 2-1 or something. But that's what it reminded me of. It was reminiscent, and it's the worst feeling in the world scoring on your own basket, right? Like if it's a tip in, if it's a hockey own goal, if it's a soccer own goal, it's one of the worst feelings in the world. So to me, it was very reminiscent, but it's kind of like Bad News Bears vibe as well. But I'm glad that they kind of, that after that run happened, because it kind of got it out of people's minds at least.
Yes, exactly. And that's like, oh man, it seems like it's going to be a bad omen for everything that's to come. But they obviously worked it out. They had a big lead by halftime and went on to win pretty easily. But I was looking at the stat sheet. It's like, who do you credit that to? Because if Davis tips it in, I mean, you don't give him credit for the basket, do you? Like, because I was looking at the stat sheet. I would have thought that on Stonehill's stat sheet, it would have been like a team basket or something like that. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
But there's nothing that indicates that, because the points obviously go to Stonehill. They don't go to Notre Dame, but there's nothing that indicates that. So I'm trying to figure out like who got credit for that bucket last night. I don't know. So the Kansas City Chiefs are 8-0 after Monday night's overtime win over Tampa Bay. Would you rather see a three-peat by the Chiefs this season or see someone else win the Super Bowl for the first time?
You know what? Like, I think as much as this might piss people off, I love like the dynasty runs. I love the dominance runs. I think it's a little bit like, I think maybe people don't like Mahomes, and I think even that's kind of tapered down a little bit. But like, I love Andy Reid. I love the way that they've kind of done this thing. Like one year they had just the offense that was going bonkers. The most recent one, it was on the back of their defense. They're finding different ways to get it done. And the common denominator is Patrick Mahomes, Chris Jones, and Andy Reid. But I'm kind of all here for it. I don't mind them winning. If the Cowboys aren't going to win, it's not a team that I hate to see win. And I'm on board with like these Warrior dynasties, Patriot dynasty, Cowboy dynasty, Laker dynasty. Like I'm kind of for it because again, I think it shows your dominance. You're not just like a one-hit wonder. You're legit, right? Like you're planting your flag as one of the best teams of kind of all time.
Yeah, I'm down for the three-peat as well. Like you're this close to it at this point. You're already 8-0. Why not just have a three-peat and a fourth? Like think about Kansas City right now in like the last 10 years, 2 World Series appearances, 1 World Series championship, 4 Super Bowl appearances, 3 Super Bowl championships already. As long as it's a team that I don't despise, like the 49ers, the Eagles, really anyone, in the NFC East, the Steelers, the Broncos, those kind of teams, as long as it's not one of those, might as well have a three-peat. Why not? And Patrick Mahomes, for the most part, like you said, is pretty likable unless you just can't stand the Chiefs and you're a fan of another team.
I think more people are upset with like the Chris Collinsworths of the world that just blow up every little thing that Mahomes does.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean? I think that's the part.
I love Patrick Mahomes. Come on now.
I think that's what it pisses some people off. And maybe even the Tony Romos as well that kind of talk about Patrick Mahomes.
Brent, boy, I wonder who Brent could be talking about here. Are there any 4-4 NFL teams who have all pros returning capable of competing for a championship? I didn't think the Bears had any all pros returning. I don't know.
Yeah,
what do you think?
I didn't think so. Well, with the most recent news, I'm about 80% sure that Dak's going to be done for the season. If I'm Micah Parsons, I really don't understand the incentive to come back either because they're not good. He's hurt and he's in a contract year. So let's just say no matter who comes back, they're just a bad team and they're not going to make the playoffs. So that's that.
Yeah. I mean, you get them back in the field. It's like the 49ers, if they do get all these teams back, are going to look a lot different at the end of the season. I think the Lions are the team to beat in the NFC right now. They just look so good and winning in different ways. But
they're like Notre Dame.
I'm with
good
you.
Run
The Cowboys
attack,
are done.
good pass attack when you need them. Good defense majority of the time. 2-headed running back monster. Good coach. Good discipline. Good culture. Work hard. Again, I would love to root for the Lions. I just can't because of DK and my good friend Sean Koski. Just can't do it.
Just way too obnoxious.
Maybe not as much DK, but definitely Sean Koski. I can't do it. I can't. Anything he likes, I cannot like. So.
Can't go for it. Yep. He's a Lions fan. He's a Michigan fan. Is he a Pistons fan?
He is a Pistons fan as well.
He's all in on.
He's Detroit. All Detroit. He's a Michigan man, and I respect that because the Tigers. They've sucked at baseball for a while. They've sucked at football for pretty much their whole existence. Michigan finally, got their national championship. So I mean, he's honestly, he's got to be doing great in the terms of like Michigan won a national championship, Tigers went on their playoff run. The Lions are obviously one of the best. Like I think he's living his best life right now. He just had a baby as well, just got married. Like he's doing his thing. So
yeah,
just can't. We're great friend, but I can't root for anything Michigan, unfortunately.
How about this question for you? Boston Celtics head coach Joe Mazzulla says there's not enough fighting in basketball anymore. Quote, the biggest thing that we rob people of from an entertainment standpoint is you can't fight anymore, Mazzulla said. We should bring back fighting. What's more entertaining than a scuffle? How come in baseball they're allowed to clear the benches? How come in hockey they're allowed to? Do you buy or sell, Mazzulla, Jesse?
Yeah, I am 100% on board with this, 100% buy. Listen, these are grown athletes, male or female, whatever sport you're playing. If you want to fight, you deal with the repercussions of what comes with the fight. Suspensions, fines, anything that comes from it. But I agree, any other sport, like in hockey, you can literally throw down your gloves and start fighting. Football, you can start fighting. You're going to get penalties. You might get ejected. Baseball, there's always at least, I feel like 4 or 5 instances in a season where a pitcher hits someone and they're charging the mound or jawing. Like, I'm okay with the fighting. Just, you got to deal with the repercussions of what comes from it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, the NBA, after the Malice at the Palace, I think that's when things really shifted in terms of getting away, from some of the fights. Because, like, obviously interesting that the Pistons were involved in that because what would that have been? About 15 years before that, the Bad Boys with Lambeer and, Mahorn and Isaiah Thomas and all those guys, Rodman, that whole crew. I mean, that's when like you could still kind of duke it out a little bit, but he's exactly right. It's like, these are grown men. I see no reason they shouldn't be able to throw it a little bit. Have you watched any of that Netflix Boston Red Sox thing yet?
Nope.
Because like you were talking about, baseball and like there's some great stuff in there from, I believe it would have been the 2003 season, like when Pedro Martinez, the whole incident with Don Zimmer, when, Zimmer, came at him, because like Pedro had hit a couple of guys. There's some great stuff in there about Pedro basically being the enforcer, is like, if you're going to like, he went up to Kevin Millar because Kevin Millar got hit. I can't remember who hit Millar, but he's like, who do you want? And Millar was like, well, that's an interesting question. It's like Jeter. So he hits Mariano Soriano he hits Soriano and Derek Jeter both on the hand. And he's like, you better remember Pedro, like to the Yankees bench, he's pointing in his head. You better remember there's nothing better than a good bench clearing brawl in baseball. There's no reason basketball shouldn't have it. I agree. They've tamed the sport. Let them eat. Let them hunt.
So it's funny. I think I saw this sometime last week, and it was, of course, like the quote that you just basically read it was in a tweet, and I sent it to a group chat amongst like 10 of us, and I was like, this is something we can at least all agree on, right? Like and everyone resoundingly said yes. And I don't know. And again, I don't want to tread this line too much, but I don't know if the NBA is worried about kind of, they don't want these players to get the wrong kind of perception, I think is maybe kind of the dealing with this one, right? Like, I think there might be some already maybe negative perception about NBA players, and I think that allowing them to fight at will only kind of adds fuel to that fire. So I think that's kind of,
and again, like the whole, have you seen the Netflix, they did the thing on the Malice at the Palace. Have you seen that?
I think so, actually.
When the Indiana Pacers and the Detroit Pistons, when everything spilled over into the stands, and again, because it started off with stuff on the court and it spilled into the stands. And I think that's, just because of the proximity to the fans, I think that's why the NBA, really after that, really cut it back and tries to avoid that as much as possible. Rapid fire or Rabid Nile rather, Chihuahua. He says, I have a question for you guys. Remember Lou Holtz saved Jimmy Johnson's butt for me. Who would Marcus say to save for him? What do you think about this one?
Ooh.
I've got one off the top of my head if you want me to throw it out there.
I think I have one as well.
I would just say Ryan Day. You know, like after Ryan Day, you know, sounding off after the end of the game last year on NBC, and you know, basically going all guns blazing at Lou Holtz. Like Marcus Freeman's, you know, such a nice guy and everything that it like,
that's what I mean. It's hard to feel
like
he's got that in him, basically.
But that's why Ryan Day seems like if there was going to be somebody, he would be the one.
So I think Ryan Day is not the easy answer, but the answer that would be most common. I would also put Pat Narduzzi's name on that list as well.
Ooh, I like that. But Pat Narduzzi, you know, might already have Marcus Freeman in his sights. But I think Pat Narduzzi's got basically everybody in his sights.
And so like at that point, it's like it's not really Notre Dame like you know focused. It's just kind of like
right.
Whoever decides to catch that stray that week or that spray from Pat Narduzzi.
Yeah.
But no one's ever done wrong by Notre Dame or like done something to really just be like
Ryan Day is the closest one. Right.
Just all that stupid nonsense he was talking when they came to Notre Dame. It's like he was like the victim of the situation, or like, you know, everyone was just bashing Ohio State and they had so much to prove. Ohio versus everyone. It's like, come on, man. What are you doing here?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, Rabinel says the Red Sox-Yankees rivalry, one of the last in that era. Pitch clock, no sliding, hard to work up anger for another. It really does. It really seems like that was not only. I don't think it's nearly.
All guys get pissed about now is pimping home runs.
Yeah, that's right. Like those teams genuinely seem to hate each other, you know, because they were both good. They played each other in the playoffs both years. And I think that, you know, Pedro kind of stirring it up a little bit definitely helped things. But
what would you?
I'm trying to think. You know, like Dodgers, Padres. Is that?
I think Mets and Yankees are also up there.
Yeah.
I think the Cubs and the Cardinals used to be, but not really as much anymore. Well, when Wilson Contreras got hit on the backswing and what's-his-face thought it was time to just plunk everyone, and even after Wilson and Ian Happ, I think, gave each other a hug and was like, oh, we're all good. And then I think, you know,
you just flat out don't have as many. You don't have like the Pedros anymore.
Well, they've also taken the rules, you know, that you can't slide into runners coming into home plate. There's a lot of new rules. There's a lot of rules, I think, kind of protecting fighting at the end of the day. So really it's like, to me, the only time bad stuff happens is one, when a guy pimps a home run or pitchers start coming high and in with fastballs that they can't control. And I think those are really the only things that upset players these days.
Yeah. Rabid Nile says Roger Clemens. That's a good point, because he was part of that as well. And I think when Clemens was, you know, with the Yankees at that point, that added to it. Like the whole Clemens throwing like this is a different team, obviously, but like Clemens throwing the broken bat at Mike Piazza in the World Series and all that stuff, if you remember that. But good times. All right, well, that's going to do it for tonight. A lot of great questions in the show, a lot of great interaction on the show tonight. Vince and I will have IB Countdown to Kickoff coming up for you tomorrow. We've got Notre Dame and Florida State and a late night edition of the postgame show, so make sure you're there for that Saturday night as well. I'm at Purdue Sunday. We've got a night game, Notre Dame women at Purdue Sunday night, so I'll have that, and we'll kind of have some details
at least you
on
don't
that
have
Monday
to
as well.
Stress about the Cowboys game. I know you were worried about that Purdue because of the Cowboys. I'll tell you what, though, if they can find a way to beat the Eagles with Cooper Rush this weekend, you'll never hear the end of it from me.
I mean, it'd be nice, but
I don't care about the season at this point. I care about beating those dirty birds.
Yeah, I'm just not. having to go to West Lafayette gives me a reason not to have to invest anything in that game. That's like the one.
It's a great excuse.
But you got Romo doing the game. I am in on that, Brandon. Notre Dame women have the best backcourt.
Oh, I was in on that last season.
Yeah, I mean, because you haven't even seen Citron yet. You've already got Olivia Miles and Hannah Hidalgo, and then you throw Sonia Citron into that mix. Like, across the board, there's no doubt.
Should I start doing all the podcasts like this?
Yeah, you do that. See if your buddy ND72 gets mad at you. All right, have a great weekend. Enjoy the game. We'll talk to you next week. IB Nation Sports Talk.